The paper shook in my brother's hands as he read the number out loud. $18,400. His voice cracked when he said it. Not a natural crack. Practiced one. The kind of emotion you rehearse in front of a mirror until it sounds real. My mother sat across from him at our kitchen table, still wearing the black dress from this morning's burial. Her hands trembled as she reached for her checkbook. The whole house smelled like funeral flowers and stale coffee. Like grief had moved in and planned to stay. My father had been in the ground for exactly 3 days. And my brother was already collecting payment. I watched him unfold the receipt slowly. Too slowly. Like he wanted everyone to see the official letterhead. Typed numbers. The stamp that made it look legitimate. My mother's pen scratched across the check. Her signature wobbled at the end. "Thank you for handling everything, Kyle," she whispered. "I couldn't have done this without you." He folded the check once. Slipped it into his wallet with the same careful precision he'd used with the receipt. "Of course, Mom. That's what family does." I sat at the far end of the table with my hands folded in my lap. Silent. Observant. My brother's eyes flicked toward me for just a second. Checking. Measuring. He expected me to stay quiet. He always did. I opened my mouth to speak. Then I closed it again. If I questioned him right now, in this moment I would look like a monster. Cruel. Suspicious. The daughter who couldn't even wait until Dad was cold before starting family drama. So I sat there and watched instead. Watched my brother fold that receipt one more time and tuck it into the inside pocket of his jacket. The movement was too neat. Too practiced. Like he'd been planning this exact moment. That's when the anger hit me. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you yell. The cold, focused kind that makes you think. My brother had just lied to our grieving mother about funeral costs. I didn't have proof yet. But every instinct in my body was screaming that something was wrong with that number. $18,000 for a simple burial. No viewing. No fancy casket. Dad had wanted basic. Affordable. Dignified. Not $18,000 worth of dignified. Kyle stood up from the table. Stretched like he'd just finished hard work instead of reading numbers off a piece of paper. "I'm going to head out," he said. "Got some errands to run." Mom nodded without looking up. I watched him walk toward the front door. Watched him check his wallet one more time. Then I made a decision. I would watch. I would wait. I would find out exactly what he'd done. I stared at the spot where the receipt had disappeared into his jacket. My brother had lied about funeral costs to steal money from our mother. Not because he was confused. Not because grief had made him careless with numbers. On purpose. He had looked at our mother's pain and seen opportunity. Had calculated exactly how much he could take before anyone questioned it. Had practiced that voice crack to sell the performance. The realization hit me like cold water. This wasn't impulse. This was planning. I stood up from the table slowly. My legs felt shaky, but I kept my face calm, composed. "I'm going to get some air," I said to Mom. She didn't respond. Just stared at the checkbook in front of her like she couldn't remember why it was open. I walked down the hallway toward the back door. My hands were shaking now that no one could see them. I pressed them flat against my sides. Outside, the November air was sharp and cold. It hurt going into my lungs, but I welcomed the pain. Cleared my head. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I opened my notes app and typed one sentence. Kyle claimed $18,400 for funeral costs on November 9th. Added the date. Time. Everything I could remember about the moment. Evidence started with details. And I was good at details. My name is Rebecca Sloan. I'm 29 years old. In my family, I've always been the responsible one. The daughter who handles logistics when everyone else falls apart. The one who makes lists and keeps schedules and remembers important dates. I don't get sympathy when things go wrong. I get handed the problems to fix. My brother gets the sympathy. The understanding. The excuses. Standing on that back porch, I finally understood something I should have seen years ago. My composure had never been valued. It had been exploited. My silence had been mistaken for agreement. Not anymore. I looked at my phone again. At that single sentence I'd typed. Felt small. Insignificant. But every case starts with one piece of evidence. Thought about Dad. About how he'd taught me to check receipts at restaurants. To verify charges on bills. To never assume people were honest just because they said they were. Trust but verify, he used to say. I'd always thought he was just being careful. Paranoid even. Now I wondered if he'd known something about Kyle that I'd been too blind to see. The back door opened behind me. I turned to see Mom standing there, her face pale and exhausted. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked. Smiled. Nodded. Lied with my expression the same way Kyle had lied with his voice. "I'm fine, Mom. Just needed a minute." She believed me. Everyone always did. Growing up, the pattern had been simple and consistent. When Kyle messed up, he cried and got comfort. When I succeeded, nobody noticed. If he failed a test, Mom and Dad sat him down for gentle talks about trying his best. If I brought home straight A's, Dad would glance at my report card and nod before going back to his newspaper. Kyle got caught shoplifting when he was 16. Mom cried. Dad paid the fine. The family therapist they sent him to said he was acting out because he needed attention. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college while living at home. Nobody threw me a party. It was just expected. When things went wrong for Kyle, he was protected. When things went right for me, I was invisible. That imbalance hadn't disappeared when Dad died. It had intensified. Kyle had shown up to the hospital with tears already streaming down his face. Had thrown himself into Mom's arms. Had made sure every nurse and doctor saw his grief. I had sat in the corner and handled the paperwork. Called the funeral home. Notified Dad's employer. Cancelled his appointments. Nobody asked if I was okay. They praised Kyle for being so emotional and so devoted. And now he was using that same performance to steal from our mother. I walked back into the kitchen. Kyle's jacket was gone. So was he. Mom sat at the table with her checkbook still open. I sat down across from her. Started writing numbers down in my own notebook. The funeral home said there might be additional costs we didn't expect, Kyle had told Mom at the hospital. "I'll handle everything. You shouldn't have to deal with this right now." Mom had nodded gratefully. I had watched from the doorway. Now, sitting at this kitchen table, I wrote down everything I could remember from that conversation. His exact words. The way he'd positioned himself between Mom and the funeral director. The way he'd volunteered to take care of all the arrangements. He'd been building this from the beginning. My phone buzzed. Text from Kyle. "Taking Mom's check to the bank now. Thanks for not making things harder today." I stared at that message for a long time. Thanks for not making things harder. Like my silence was a favor I'd done him instead of a choice I'd made strategically. Texted back. "Of course. We're family. Let him think I was complicit. Let him believe I'd stay quiet. People got careless when they thought they'd already won." Mom stood up from the table slowly. "I'm going to lie down," she said. "This day has been so long." I helped her upstairs. Waited until I heard her bedroom door close. Then I went back to the kitchen. Pulled out my laptop. Started making calls. The first one was to Westview Funeral Home. Kept my voice calm. Professional. Polite. "Hi, this is Rebecca Sloan. I'm calling about my father's services. I just need a copy of the itemized receipt for my records." Over the next 2 days, Kyle called everyone. Aunts, uncles, Dad's old friends from work. I listened from other rooms as he told the same story to each person. The words were slightly different, but the performance was identical. Careful pauses. Voice breaks. The emphasis on how overwhelming and expensive everything had been. "I'm just glad I could help Mom through this," he said into the phone. "She shouldn't have to worry about money on top of everything else." People praised him. Called him responsible. Said Dad would be proud. I kept my face neutral and my ears open. Because the details didn't match. To Aunt Gloria. He said the casket alone was $8,000. To Uncle Frank he said it was $6,000. To Dad's friend Hugh, he mentioned unexpected transportation fees that he hadn't mentioned to anyone else. He was improvising, adding details to make the total seem more reasonable. That meant he hadn't prepared a consistent story. That meant he was vulnerable. I sat in the living room with my notebook open on my lap, writing down every discrepancy, every contradiction, every number that didn't line up. Kyle walked past me on his way to the kitchen, saw me writing. "What are you working on?" he asked. His tone was casual, but I caught the edge underneath. "Just some things for work," I said without looking up. "Got behind while we were dealing with everything." He accepted that, relaxed again, walked away thinking I was no threat at all. The next morning I called Westview Funeral Home again. This time I got through to someone in billing. A woman named Paula with a kind voice and a professional manner. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said when I explained why I was calling. "Let me pull up your father's account." I heard computer keys clicking. Here we are. Vernon Sloan, services provided November 6th. I can absolutely send you an itemized receipt. What email address should I use? I gave her my email. Then I took a breath. Can I ask what the total was? Just to make sure I have the right amount in my records. More clicking. The total came to $11,800. That included the service, casket, transportation, and burial plot fee. My hand tightened around my phone. $11,800. Kyle had claimed $18,400. A difference of $6,600. "Thank you so much," I managed to say. "I really appreciate your help." "Of course. I'll send that receipt right over." I hung up and sat very still. $6,600. That was almost half of what he'd claimed. My brother hadn't just inflated the number slightly. He'd stolen enough money to buy a decent used car. My email notification dinged 30 seconds later. The receipt was there, waiting. Proof in PDF format. I downloaded it, saved 3 copies, printed 2. Then I sat at my desk and stared at the numbers. All the evidence I needed was right there in black and white. That night, Kyle ordered expensive takeout for dinner. Thai food from the place downtown that charges $25 per entree. He spread it across the dining room table like we were celebrating something. "We all need to eat," he said when Mom protested about the cost. "And nobody feels like cooking." He paid with cash, pulled a thick stack of bills from his wallet and counted them out with the same careful precision he'd used folding that receipt. Mom picked at her food. I ate slowly, watching. Kyle laughed too loud at something on his phone. Tipped the delivery driver $40. Made a show of being generous with money he'd stolen. Thought about Dad. About how he'd saved every dollar. Worked overtime for 30 years so Mom would be comfortable after he was gone. Kyle was spending that security on pad thai and performance. After dinner, I helped Mom clean up while Kyle went to his old room to make some calls. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The funeral home receipt I'd requested had arrived earlier, and I'd been waiting for the right moment. But there was no right moment. There was only now. I excused myself and went upstairs to the guest room where I'd been staying since Dad got sick. Opened my laptop. Pulled up the email from Paula at Westview. The itemized receipt was beautifully detailed. Every charge listed separately. Service fee. Casket. Transportation. Flowers. Everything added up to exactly $11,800. I compared it to the notes I'd taken during Kyle's phone calls. Nothing matched his stories. I spent the next morning creating a file. Not just a folder on my computer. An actual physical folder with printed documents, organized by date, with tabs marking different sections. Bank records showing Mom's check to Kyle. The real receipt from Westview Funeral Home. My handwritten notes documenting every conversation, every phone call, every inconsistency in Kyle's story. Screenshots of his text messages thanking me for not making things harder. I worked methodically, carefully. The same way I'd learned to handle details at my job as a project coordinator. Evidence wasn't just about having information. It was about presenting it clearly, making it impossible to ignore or dismiss. Around noon, Mom knocked on my door. "Honey, are you hungry? I made sandwiches." I saved my work and went downstairs. Kyle was already at the kitchen table. He smiled when I walked in. The smile of someone who thought he'd gotten away with something. "How's the work project going?" he asked. "Good. Almost finished, actually." "That's great. I know how you like to stay busy." He said it like a compliment, like my competence was endearing instead of threatening. I took a bite of my sandwich, chewed slowly, let him believe whatever made him comfortable. Across the table, Mom pushed food around her plate without eating. She looked so tired, so much older than she had 2 weeks ago. Kyle had stolen from her grief, from her trust, and he was sitting there eating lunch like it was any other Tuesday. Not for much longer. I found the duplicate receipt that night. I was going through Westview Funeral Home's website, looking at their public pricing information, when I noticed something odd. They listed their standard package costs online. Casket options, service fees, everything transparent and clearly priced. I added up the components of Dad's service based on what I knew he'd chosen. The total came to $11,700. $100 less than the receipt Paula had sent me. I called the funeral home first thing the next morning. Paula answered again. "Hi, this is Rebecca Sloan again. I had a question about the receipt you sent yesterday." "Of course. How can I help?" "The total shows $11,800, but when I add up the individual items, I get $11,700. Is there an additional fee I'm missing?" He paused. Click some keys. "Oh, I see the discrepancy. There was a $100 processing fee that wasn't itemized separately. Let me send you an updated receipt with that broken out clearly." "Thank you. I really appreciate your patience with all my questions." "Absolutely. We want everything to be clear for our families." The new receipt arrived within minutes. Every single charge accounted for. Every dollar justified. I printed it and added it to my folder. Then I sat back and stared at the evidence I'd collected. There was no ambiguity here. No room for misunderstanding. Kyle had claimed $18,400. The actual cost was $11,800. He'd stolen $6,600 from our grieving mother, and I could prove it. I tried showing Mom the discrepancy that afternoon. I approached it gently, carefully, sat down next to her on the couch where she was folding laundry that didn't need folding. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." She looked up, already tired before I even started. "What is it, honey?" I pulled out the 2 receipts. The one Kyle had shown her and the one from Westview. "I've been organizing paperwork for Dad's estate, and I noticed something that doesn't match up." I showed her the numbers, pointed out the differences, explained as clearly as I could without directly accusing Kyle. Her face went pale, then red. Then she shook her head. "Rebecca, please. I can't do this right now. I know the timing is awful, but..." "No. I mean, I can't have you and your brother fighting. Not right now. Not over money. Your father would hate this. Dad would want us to be honest. Your father is dead." Her voice broke. "And I need my children to get along. I need something in this family to not fall apart." She stood up, walked away from me and the receipts and the truth she didn't want to see. I sat there alone on the couch. But I didn't put the folder away. I added this conversation to my notes, documented the date and time and her exact words. Then I kept going anyway. I started remembering other times. 3 years ago, Kyle had borrowed $2,000 from Dad for business expenses. Never paid it back. Dad never asked. Last Christmas, he'd charged $800 on Mom's credit card for gifts for the family. Most of the presents under the tree came from me. The summer before that, he'd stayed with our parents for just a few weeks while getting back on his feet. He stayed 4 months and never contributed to groceries or utilities. This wasn't new behavior. This was just escalation. He'd been testing the limits his whole life, seeing how much he could take before anyone called him on it. And we'd all let him. Made excuses. Looked the other way. I was done looking the other way. Created a timeline. Went through old emails and text messages. Documented every instance I could find of Kyle asking for money or making promises he didn't keep. The pattern was undeniable. He didn't borrow. He took. He didn't pay back. He forgot. He didn't feel guilty. He felt entitled. I saved everything in a folder labeled Kyle Financial History. Backed it up to 3 different locations. Evidence was only useful if you didn't lose it. And I wasn't losing this. On Saturday morning I found something that changed everything. I was searching online for any other documentation related to Dad's funeral when I stumbled across a receipt uploaded to a public records site. Same funeral home. Same date. Same services. Different total. The receipt showed $9,200. Not $11,800. Not $18,400. $9,200. I stared at my screen trying to make sense of it. Then I called Paula at Westview again. "I'm so sorry to bother you again," I said. "But I found another receipt online, and I'm confused about which one is correct. Can you tell me what website you found it on?" I gave her the URL. She was quiet for a moment. "That's odd. Can you send me a screenshot?" I did. 5 minutes later she called back. "Rebecca, I need to be very careful about what I say, but that receipt appears to be fabricated. Our letterhead is correct, but the formatting is wrong. And we would never charge that total for the services your father received." My heart stopped. Someone created a fake receipt. I can't speculate on that. But I can confirm that's not a document from our company. Thanked her. Hung up. Stared at the evidence in front of me. Kyle had created a fake receipt. Shown it to Mom. Collected $18,000. The real cost was $11,800. Someone was lying. And I knew exactly who. Kyle started telling people he'd covered the difference himself. I heard him on the phone with Aunt Gloria Tuesday afternoon. "The funeral home worked with us on the price," he said. His voice was smooth. "Practiced. But there were still extra costs I paid out of pocket. I didn't want to burden Mom with all of it. So noble. Oh, false." Aunt Gloria praised him. Said he was selfless. Said Dad would be so proud. I sat in the next room listening to every word. He had no idea what I had in my folder. The real receipts. The fake receipt. The documented lies. The timeline of his other financial manipulations. Every piece of evidence carefully organized and impossible to dismiss. But I didn't confront him. Didn't show my hand. I just waited. Let him relax. Let him think he'd pulled it off. Let him get comfortable in his lie. People made mistakes when they felt safe. And I needed him to make one more. That evening, he sat in Dad's old recliner flipping through channels. Completely at ease. "Hey Rebecca," he called out. "You want to order pizza for dinner?" "Sure," I said from the kitchen. "Cool. My treat." His treat. With money he'd stolen. I watched him pull out his wallet. Counted the cash inside without him noticing. Still thick. Still plenty. He ordered 2 large pizzas. Paid with a $50 bill when they arrived. Told the driver to keep the change from 60. Generous with someone else's security. I ate my pizza and said nothing. Just wrote it all down after he went to bed. By Thursday my folder was complete. 23 pages of documented evidence. Every conversation. Every receipt. Every inconsistency. Every lie. I organized it chronologically. Added tabs. Included a summary page at the front outlining the key points. Professional. Clear. Undeniable. I made 3 copies. Kept them in separate locations. One in my car. One in my apartment across town. One in a safety deposit box at my bank. I wasn't taking chances. That afternoon, Kyle found me in the kitchen making coffee. Can I ask you something, he said. His tone was casual but there was something underneath it. Testing. Of course. Do you trust me? The question hung in the air between us. I turned to face him. Met his eyes. Smile. Of course I trust you. You're my brother. He relaxed. Actually smiled back. Good. I know this whole situation has been weird. I just want to make sure we're okay. We're fine, Kyle. I know you did what you thought was best. He believed me. Completely. Totally. Without question. That's the thing about people who lie constantly. They assume everyone else is lying too. So when you tell them what they want to hear, they never question it. He walked away satisfied. I poured my coffee and stared out the window. He just made his last mistake. Asking me if I trusted him. Needing my validation. Seeking my approval. That meant he was worried. Meant he suspected I might know something. Meant he was about to get sloppy. I just had to wait for the moment. The moment came 3 days later at a family gathering. Mom had invited people over for Sunday dinner. Said she needed to be around family. Needed to feel less alone. Aunt Gloria came. Uncle Frank. Dad's sister Beth. Few cousins. The house filled with voices and movement and the smell of pot roast. I stayed in the background. Helped serve food. Kept glasses filled. Listen. Kyle held court in the living room. Told stories about Dad. Made people laugh. Played his role perfectly. Then Uncle Frank asked about the funeral costs. I heard it was pretty expensive, he said. How much did it end up being? Kyle didn't hesitate. Around 16,000, give or take. I froze in the kitchen doorway. Around 16,000. He told Mom 18,400. He just changed the total without even thinking about it. Aunt Gloria frowned. I thought you said it was over 18,000. Kyle laughed. Waved his hand dismissively. The exact number is somewhere in that range. I'd have to check the receipt. You don't remember exactly. Uncle Frank pressed. It's been a stressful time. The details blur together. But Aunt Beth was watching him now. Really watching. Kyle, honey, do you still have the receipt? I need it for the insurance claim. For what insurance claim? Your father had a small burial policy through his work. I'm helping your mother file for it. They need documentation of expenses. Kyle's face went white. Then red. Then carefully neutral. Oh, but yeah, I can get that for you. When? Soon. I have to find it. Aunt Beth's eyes narrowed slightly. You don't have it with you. It's at my apartment. Can you bring it next time you visit? Sure. Absolutely. But he laughed when he said it. Too fast. Too high. The room had gone quiet. People were paying attention now. I set down the pitcher of iced tea I'd been holding. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting for. Aunt Beth wouldn't let it go. Kyle, the insurance company needs the documentation soon. Can you email me a copy tonight? I'll have to scan it. My scanner is broken. You can use your phone. The receipt is pretty detailed. A scan would be better. Then take it to a print shop tomorrow. He was sweating now. Actual beads of sweat forming on his forehead. I will. Promise. Just give me a few days to track it down. You said you had it at your apartment. I do. But I have a lot of papers. I need to organize them first. The excuses were getting thinner. Weaker. Uncle Frank set down his beer. Kyle, why can't you just show us the receipt now? Don't you have a photo of it on your phone? I didn't think to take one. But you showed it to your mother. That was the original. So you gave her the original receipt and don't have a copy. Kyle's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. I have a copy somewhere. I just need to find it. Aunt Gloria stood up. This is strange, Kyle. Why is this so difficult? It's not difficult. I'm just disorganized. That's all. But his voice had risen. Lost its smoothness. He was panicking. I walked into the living room slowly. Everyone turned to look at me. I might be able to help, I said quietly. Kyle's eyes locked on mine. Wait, shared. Help how? I have some documentation. About Dad's funeral. Maybe it would work for the insurance claim. What documentation? And Beth asked. I went upstairs to the guest room. Came back down with my folder. Placed it carefully on the coffee table. Silence spread through the room like spilled water. What is that? Asked. Information about Dad's funeral expenses, I said. I've been organizing everything for estate purposes. I opened the folder. Took out the receipt from Westview Funeral Home. This is the itemized receipt from the funeral home. The total cost was $11,800. I handed it to Aunt Beth. She read it carefully. Her expression changed. 11,800, she repeated. Not 16,000. Not 18,000. Kyle stood up. That's not the full cost. There were other expenses. What other expenses? Uncle Frank asked. Transportation. Flowers. Things that aren't on that receipt. I took out another document. The receipt includes transportation and flowers. Everything is itemized here. I passed it around the room. Let everyone see for themselves. Kyle's hands were shaking now. You don't understand. There were complications. Additional fees. What fees? Yes. My voice was calm. Steady. I'd have to check my records. Your records that you can't find. I can find them. I just need time. Aunt Beth stood up. Walked over to Kyle. How much did your mother pay you for the funeral? I don't remember exactly. Yes, you do. Silence. Kyle. Mom's voice was small, broken. How much did I pay you? He looked at her. Looked at me. Looked at all the faces watching him. $18,400, he finally whispered. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. Where did the extra money go? Why did he lie about the cost? What happened to the difference? Kyle tried to explain. Tried to deflect. Said he'd planned to invest it. Said he was going to give it back. Said he'd made a mistake. But the documents didn't respond to his excuses. The numbers didn't change based on his tone. The evidence just sat there. Silent. Undeniable. Mom started crying. Not the soft tears from before. Harsh, angry sobs that shook her whole body. You stole from me, she said. While your father was still warm in the ground, you stole from me. I didn't steal. I borrowed. Without asking. Without telling me the truth. That's stealing. Aunt Beth picked up her phone. I'm calling the bank. We're stopping that check if it hasn't cleared yet. It cleared last week, Kyle said quietly. Then you're writing your mother a check for $6,600. Right now. I don't have that much. You have it. You spent my brother's hard-earned money on takeout and tips and showing off. You have it, and you're giving it back. Uncle Frank stood up. And then you're leaving. You're not welcome in this house until you make this right. Kyle looked at me. His expression was different now. Not confident. Not dismissive. Scared. And something else. Betrayal. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong by telling the truth. I met his eyes without flinching. He'd counted on my silence. My compliance. My lifelong pattern of staying quiet and cleaning up his messes. He'd miscalculated. Kyle tried to argue for another 10 minutes. Tried to explain. Tried to justify. Tried to make himself the victim. But no one was listening anymore. The documents had done their job. The evidence spoke louder than his excuses. Mom sat on the couch with her face in her hands. Aunt Gloria rubbed her back. Aunt Beth was already on the phone with the bank's fraud department. Uncle Frank stood between Kyle and the rest of the family like a barrier. Write the check or leave, he said. Those are your options. Kyle pulled out his checkbook. His hand shook so badly he could barely write. $6,600. Made out to our mother. Signed with the same careful precision he'd used to fold that fake receipt. He handed it to Uncle Frank instead of Mom. Couldn't even look at her. I'll need time to gather the funds, he said. His voice was small now, deflated. You have 48 hours before I file a police report, Aunt Beth said. And I want documentation of where every dollar of that money went. Kyle didn't argue, just grabbed his jacket and walked toward the door. He paused when he passed me. Happy now, he whispered. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The house was quiet except for Mom's crying. I sat down on the floor next to the couch. Didn't try to comfort her. Didn't say I was sorry. Just sat there while the truth settled over all of us like dust. The aftermath was brutal. Over the next week, Kyle's support system evaporated like water on hot pavement. Aunt Gloria stopped returning his calls. Uncle Frank blocked his number. Cousins who'd praised him on social media deleted their comments. The check he'd written bounced. Aunt Beth filed a police report anyway. Kyle left voicemails for me. 7 of them in 3 days. The first few were angry, accusatory. How could I do this to family? How could I betray him like this? The middle ones were pleading. Couldn't we work this out? Couldn't I convince everyone to give him another chance? The last one was just quiet breathing. Then a whispered "I'm sorry." That sounded more like an admission of defeat than actual remorse. I didn't respond to any of them. What was there to say? Mom stopped crying after the 4th day. Started getting angry instead. I should have seen it, she said over coffee one morning. All those times he borrowed money. All those excuses. I should have seen the pattern. He was good at hiding it. No, I was good at ignoring it. Because it was easier than admitting my son was. She couldn't finish the sentence. A thief, I said quietly. She flinched, but she nodded. That afternoon I thought about Dad. About the last conversation we'd had before the stroke. He'd been going through old financial records, organizing things, preparing for retirement. Your brother asked to borrow money again, he'd said. I told him no this time. Good. Think he'll take it well. I'd laughed. Kyle never takes no well. Dad had looked at me for a long moment. Keep an eye on your mother after I'm gone. She's too trusting. I thought he was just being paranoid. Now I knew better. He'd seen this coming. Had tried to warn me without saying it directly. I wished I'd listened better. 2 weeks after the confrontation, Mom asked me to go through Dad's office. I can't face it yet, she said. But we need to organize his papers. For the estate. I spent a Saturday afternoon sorting through files and folders. That's when I found the notebook. It was tucked in the back of Dad's desk drawer. A small spiral notebook with worn edges. Inside, in Dad's careful handwriting, was a record. Every time Kyle had borrowed money. Every promise to pay it back. Every excuse for why he hadn't. 20 years of documentation. The final entry was dated 2 weeks before Dad's stroke. Kyle asked for $5,000 for business investment. Told him no. He got angry. Accused me of not trusting him. I told him trust is earned, not given. He left without saying goodbye. Below that, in different ink, Dad had written one more line. If anything happens to me, Rebecca will know what to do. She always does. I sat in Dad's old office chair and cried for the first time since he died. Not because of the money. Not because of Kyle's betrayal. Because Dad had trusted me to protect Mom. Had known I would figure it out. Had believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. I took the notebook downstairs. Showed it to Mom. She read it slowly. Her hands trembling on every page. When she finished, she looked at me with clear eyes. Your father knew, she whispered. He knew. And he trusted you to handle it. He nodded. She pulled me into a hug. Held on tight. Thank you, she said. For being strong enough to do what I couldn't. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe properly. Kyle never paid the money back. The police investigation went nowhere. Without evidence of criminal intent, they said it was a civil matter. But the consequences were real anyway. He lost his relationship with Mom. Lost the respect of the entire extended family. Lost his role as the favored child, the one everyone made excuses for. All without me having to raise my voice or make accusations. The evidence had done that work. The truth had finished what his arrogance started. 3 months later, I helped Mom set up new financial systems, separate accounts, better documentation, strict boundaries about lending money to family. I should have done this years ago, she said. You're doing it now. That's what matters. She sold Dad's life insurance policy to pay off some debts. Used part of it to take a trip she'd always wanted. Started making decisions based on what she needed instead of what Kyle wanted. Started rebuilding. I went back to my apartment across town. Back to my job. Back to my normal life. But something had changed in me fundamentally. I'd learned that composure wasn't weakness. That silence could be strategy. That patience could be power. I'd learned that documentation mattered more than confrontation. That sometimes the best way to fight was to simply let people reveal themselves. Kyle had counted on my passivity. Had banked on my pattern of staying quiet and keeping peace. He'd lost that bet. And I'd learned exactly what I was capable of when I stopped making myself smaller to make other people comfortable. I packed up the last of my things from Mom's house on a quiet Tuesday morning. The guest room was empty again. Clean. Ready for actual guests instead of daughters staying too long out of obligation. Mom helped me carry boxes to my car. You don't have to leave, she said. You're always welcome here. I know. But it's time. She hugged me on the front porch. Held on a little longer than usual. What you did, she started. Then stopped. I know it wasn't easy. It was necessary. Still. Going against family. Having everyone angry at you. That took courage. You would have done the same. She shook her head. No. I wouldn't have. That's why your father trusted you to do it. I drove away from that house thinking about everything that had happened. Kyle had tried to contact me once more 2 weeks ago. An email this time.